The Week 17 fantasy football finals have come and gone as Jake and I are recording this. And if you've lost, you might be wondering, but what's next? And if you won, you might be thinking, what's the best way I can double or nothing my winnings? Well, that's through DFS. And at Fantasy Points, we do not ignore Week 18. We put the same effort we do into Week 18 as we do into Week 1, which is why we are here with an absolutely insane idea. Early look into DFS for Week 18. What?
Why are you shaking your head? You're welcome.
Good luck with all of the inactives, incentives, games not mattering, teams packing it in and going home. It's going to be insane, but we have your back. That's Jake Tribbey, the writer of DFS Early Look. You can get that link in the description if you want access. We have been here every single week knocking out these early looks. Let's send everyone home in the regular season with some upper tier info. We're going to start at quarterback. I have been Bo leaving since week 1, and finally Bo Nix has made the early look. DraftKings QB6, FanDuel QB7. Let's talk about Bo Nix after an insane game.
Yeah, last week's game was absolutely insane. And one of the big themes with this week's article is that we'll be looking for players who are heavily incentivized to win their respective games. The Broncos need to win in Week 18 to secure a playoff spot. They have a great chance to do so against a Kansas City team that is resting their starters. The game total here is just 38.5. That doesn't indicate much offensive upside for Denver, but I certainly want exposure to an offense that will be doing everything they can to secure a win, especially against second-string defenders. Bo Nix averages 21.5 DraftKings fantasy points per game since Week 8. A mark that ranks 5th best among slate-eligible quarterbacks over the full season. His impressive play in the second half of the year has led to the Broncos passing more. Denver's plus 4.2% pass rate over expectation over this stretch ranks top 7 over the full year. We can obviously nitpick the game environment here, but it's really hard to be down on Nix when he's a borderline lock for 35 pass attempts against a backup defense in a must-win game.
He's special at times. And hey, Marvin Mims. Why not? Why not with the cheap stack? Who knows? Let's talk running back here. DraftKings RB2, FanDuel RB2. It's Bijan Robinson, who a lot of the internet was panicking with how few touches Bijan received in the fourth quarter and then overtime. Let's talk about it. It's Falcons versus Carolina.
Yeah, I really don't think it gets much easier than Bijan against the Panthers this week. Robinson earned 94% of backfield expected fantasy points and the highest snap share of his career in Week 17. It's clear Atlanta is finally giving Robinson all the work he can handle. Really don't expect that to change in a must-win game for Atlanta here in Week 18. Carolina is arguably the ideal matchup for Bijan Robinson. The Panthers rank as the single softest schedule-adjusted matchup for opposing running backs. But what's key here is they allow the league's highest success rate on zone rushing concepts, which make up 77% of Robinson's rush attempts. You combine the best possible matchup with a must-win game. It's safe to call this arguably the best week of the year to play Bijan Robinson.
I am expecting a nuclear performance. I imagine ownership matches, but there just comes time where the chalk, that's where you need to be. Let's talk running back Ameer Abdullah. This man almost single-handedly took me out of 2 finals matchups this last week. I was sweating every time I think there's no way it could be Abdullah that cost me. It turns out he's just kind of good in this role. DraftKings RB36, FanDuel's RB24, kind of a big discrepancy. Let's talk Ameer Abdullah.
Yeah, so Abdullah is coming off the 3rd best running back workload of the week by expected fantasy points. He earned 20 carries, which was his most in any game since 2017, and 83% of snaps inside the 10-yard line, demonstrating shockingly great touchdown equity for a running back who's been primarily relied on in the passing game so far this season. I think the Raiders are finally coming around to playing Abdullah a bit more. And the Week 18 matchup with the Chargers sets up well for Abdullah's pass game role if the Raiders are listed as 5.5-point underdogs. And if he can push for the majority of backfield carries on top of his usual receiving workload here, there's really no reason he should be priced as a low-end RB3 on DraftKings. He looks like arguably the best avenue to save salary at the running back position this week. Granted, I wouldn't be surprised if some massive values opened up as we get more news later in the week.
Just with an unpredictable week like this, having this kind of price on a running back, you can pretty much lock into touches is a blessing, really. Let's talk wide receiver, and why not? Why not go record chasing here with Mike Evans, who seemed so clear that Baker just said, you're getting a bunch of touchdowns today here in week 17.
Exactly, yeah. Tampa Bay needs to win here to secure the division, and Mike Evans is just 85 receiving yards away from his 11th consecutive 1,000-yard receiving season, a feat that Baker Mayfield himself has noted he'd like to see Evans accomplish, and this is the exact kind of setup you want to look for in Week 18, a situation where both player and team incentives should lead to a massive fantasy performance. The best part, Marshawn Lattimore is no longer on the Saints, so Evans should be able to do whatever he wants against this New Orleans secondary. The spread is massive here. Tampa Bay's favored by 14, and that could cap Evans' upside. But we did see virtually every Buccaneers pass catcher have a great game in Week 17, despite a similarly massive game spread. So I'm still excited to play Evans in a game where he could tie Jerry Rice in the record books.
The Bucs may not play a full game, but I feel like this is a game the Bucs can get you there in a half of football. Let's talk about a Carolina Panthers pass catcher who, I don't know why, but for some reason, it doesn't matter how he ages, Adam Thielen just seems to be dialing back to early 2000s Randy Moss as he's beating double coverage downfield by outrunning them. I don't know what this dude is on, but let's talk about Adam Thielen.
Yeah, absolutely. The Panthers haven't had anything to play for in several weeks, but that really hasn't stopped them from scoring fantasy points. Adam Thielen averages 19.9 DraftKings fantasy points per game since week 13, a mark that would rank third best among slate-eligible wide receivers over the full season. Carolina has been no stranger to negative game scripts over that stretch, and week 18 should be no different, with the Panthers listed as 8-point underdogs against Atlanta. We know this passing offense flows through Thielen, and he draws a great matchup. Atlanta ranks as the second softest schedule-adjusted matchup for opposing wide receivers so far this season. This game is shaping up as the best offensive environment of the slate, a 47.5 total, which should make Thielen pop in projections across the industry, especially on FanDuel, where he's somehow priced as the wide receiver 28.
Seems like a massive oversight on FanDuel's account. Insane. Let's talk about tight end, and I think we need to put a little bit of respect on former Pro Bowler Tyler Huntley's name, as I played him in a Scott Barrett Invitational Dynasty Finals versus Drafter Party's own co-host Ryan Heath, where he put up more points than Kyler Murray, which means there's hope for your tight end here for the DFS Early Look, Jonnu Smith.
Yeah, absolutely. Tua Tagovailoa's status in Week 18 is still up in the air, but Smith is set up for success regardless of who plays quarterback for Miami this week, as Thomas hinted at. Since Week 11, Smith has averaged 19 DraftKings fantasy points per game and 0.15 first downs per route run, marks that would both rank top 6 among wide receivers over the full season. Yet Jonnu Smith is priced as the wide receiver 20 on the Week 18 main slate. The matchup is solid. New York has allowed the 7th most schedule-adjusted fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends since Week 12. And if Tyler Huntley ends up starting, his league-leading 31% tight end target rate since 2021 should only bolster Jonnu Smith's workload. I think he's a great play in a must-win game for the Dolphins.
Especially in a game for a team that's out to prove a point. Should add, when Jonnu Smith scored this last Week 17 game, it was done. There was no need for them to be throwing the ball, but man, they dialed it up, and a late touchdown to Jonnu helped get him there. For everyone who played him this week, I expect a score to potentially be run up again to kind of prove a point for people getting on their head coach. That's going to do it for this DFS Early Look here on the YouTube channel. Remember to like and subscribe. We have loved being here with you guys from weeks 1 all the way up to week 18. Again, if you have not read Jake Tribbey's article in full, you should be doing that over at FantasyPoints.com, where you can get the early bird special right now and get access. I'm Thomas Tipple. That's Jake Tribbey. This was the Week 18 DFS Early Look.